that behind me. Absolutely stunning. Hello? A fantastic bit of kit. It's a great bit of tool to use for us photographers. It really does work well, but paying just that little bit more care and attention is going to get you some better results. You're going to be happier about it. You know, you're not going to get somebody along the line going, hang on a minute, you've cloned that, haven't you? You know, if you just pay that extra bit, 10-20 minutes usually on the image to make it the best it can be, and take out all those areas where you can see cloned, you know, the cloned aspects of somewhere else that's been brought in from somewhere else of the image. It doesn't take long, and it's really worth it. And I think, you know, rather than being lazy and just pressing content away fill, let it do its job, walk away. Don't walk away. Have 5 or 10 minutes just paying more critical attention to the image, and you're going to get a better job. You're going to get a better image at the end of the day, and you will be happier about it, believe me, a long run. Because that's what we're here to do, make great images, and we want them to be their best. That's what I'm here to do anyway. Okay, so where do we start? So I've chosen an image that I took at Goitstock Falls the other day, and I've run it through Lightroom. I'm kind of happy with how it is. I'm happy with the photograph. I think it's nice. I've messed with the tonal values. I've messed with the colour, and I've brought the highlights up a little bit. I've got it how I want it, basically. Now, in terms of content aware fill, there's not anything I really want to take out of this image, but having said that, it is an image that I'm going to use for this tutorial, just basically because it lends itself to the kind of things I want to talk about. So first of all, what we would do is get your lasso tool, and we'd go into the image and select an area of the image that we want to sort of clone out, that we want to get rid of. And this little outcrop of rocks here that I'm just going to use as a part of this example. Okay, I've got it selected. Got my layers palette up, and now I want to go to edit, fill. This checkbox comes up, this little dialog box comes up. You want to make sure that content aware is checked, and you want to press OK. And then what Photoshop does for you is a pretty good job of taking those things out, which is done. It's done a fairly good job. And I have said that it's a great tool. You know, it really does do what it says on the tin. It you know, kind of intelligently has a look at the image and goes, you want this doing? Okay, I've done it for you, and there we have it. So it's not a bad job at all. Now, the thing that has happened, which I said would happen, is that you get these visual echoes in the image, because what it's doing basically is borrowing bits of image from elsewhere in the photograph. And this is the thing I'm talking about. These are the bits that you want to get rid of. If you want to make the photograph the best it can be, if you've got to take content out of it, if you've got to use content aware fill, and there's definitely something you want to remove from the image, you've got to sort of then sort of say to yourself afterwards, you know, is that good enough? And I think in this case, certainly what this has presented just now with this image, I don't think it is. I think you could do a bit more, and this is what I'm going to show you. So it's done a great job. It's not bad at all. But we're just going to go in, I'm just going to deselect, so I'm going to go Command D just to get rid of those marching ants, and I'm just going to zoom in and have a look at the area that it's cloned. As you can see, it's not bad. There's a bit of a line just round here. Let me just get my arrow up. Like, you can see that there's a bit of an edge there. You can see this shape here, yep, has been cloned directly from over here. You can see there's an absolute sort of copy of this stone under the water here. And I think quite possibly it's probably done it again there and just sort of filled that area there. Now we can lose these bits. Now what we're going to do basically is, first of all, just going to come into my healing brush tool. First of all, I'm just going to clone some areas. This is a swirling pool here. I'm going to clone, so Alt and copy from a bit where you want to clone from, and just sort of brush in. Actually, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'll go to my actual clone stamp tool, and clone areas that are actually going to copy. So what I'm doing is just see this little area here. There's a swirl of water coming here, and I just want the image to keep doing that. So I'm borrowing bits of this darkened area here and just painting it in to carry on that swirl. Okay, now I've done a direct clone there, and I've got sort of visual echoes as well. So how to get rid of that, I've just come to my healing brush tool. Works like the clone. You sort of sample areas of the image by hitting Alt and clicking where you want to sample from. It's like just brushing into the image and removing bits and pieces that you don't want, or and making sure that everything's tickety-boo. Great word, tickety-boo. Okay, and I'm just taking out bits at a time. So I'm constantly sampling. So I'm keep clicking Alt and moving the mouse, sort of bringing bits of images around and tidying up the areas around this part of the water swirl here. And that's not so bad, quite like that. Now this image here, we can keep it. We can keep sort of quite a bit of it. I think, you know, what we need to do is basically just show that it's not a straight copy of what's happening over in this part of the image. And in order to do that, again on the healing brush tool, I tend to sample areas where I want to take the imagery from, kind of just brush things out. Yeah, so you see this, like, it's very obvious that this is a clone part of here. You can see it. It's like a kind of it's like the fractal edge that repeats itself. It's doesn't need to be there. So I'm going to disguise it by trying to change as many aspects of that clone area as possible. Just soften it down so it's not so obvious that it's a direct copy from something over here. I'm just going to soften the edge of that rock. Don't mind it being there. It looks like a rock in the water. That's absolutely fine. Okay, and just taking a bit at a time and taking my time, sort of how I am cloning out and how I'm adding bits of elements back into the water. Now it's kind of, in a sense, it could be argued that for this tutorial I've chosen a pretty easy image to do this with, because, you know, reflections on the water can be sporadic and haphazard, and you know, you might not even notice that you've done a clone if you're going to look at it with any critical eye, but which is fair dues. But also it just shows you that you can sort of just take bits from other places in the image and just soften out the way that the content aware tool has acted in the first place. So I'm just softening out these areas around these rocks that have been cloned, and I'm just using stuff that's in the image. You know, I'm using areas quite close to the area that I've used the content aware tool. If I was to go over, you know, over the top of the image over here somewhere and start cloning stuff out and bringing it back over to this part of the image, I think you start going to sort of run into trouble then, because the tonal value would have changed. The colours would have changed somewhat. You know, it's very much darker over there, and as much as, you know, the image has a decent sort of spread of colour across here, you know, it does change in and around the image. So I'm very much staying close to the area that I've used the content aware tool in order to sort of make the changes and sort of steal bits from here, there and everywhere. And I'm just doing tiny bits to this. You know, I don't want to do too much, but I'm just tidying it up. And I think, again, I think on the top of that rock it still looks a bit similar to this. So I'm just going to work into that a little bit more. Pressing Alt and maybe borrow from just down here a little bit and just smooth these pieces out. Okay, as you can see, we're just starting to lose the idea that this is a clone from over here, and you could do probably a lot more that I'm going to do here, but just by way of an example, just smoothing parts out, making sure that there's no real kind of hard, you see there's a bit of a line here where the lasso tool was. You can soften that out as well just by selecting areas and just blending some of the darker areas into that water. And I think there's a bit of a dark here. There's a visual echo here. There's that bit there. And there's a bit there that are, obviously, you know, it's the same sort of bit of image. So I just want to lose the idea that that's happened. Just get rid of it if we can. And all I'm doing is just multiple selecting bits and pieces all the time. You can change the size of the brush, that helps sometimes just to get the smaller areas. Bring some of this darker line. You can actually, what I tend to do is go between the clone stamp and the healing brush tool. The clone stamp obviously directly clones something. Just going to move that bit of a darker area. Can you see that? And then what I'll do is I go back to the healing brush tool, which does sample an area, but it blends it as well. Where the clone tool actually just does a hard copy of part of the image you're trying to steal. And again, every time I sort of click, I'm stealing a different bit of the area of the image. Pressing Alt down, you're sampling all the time. So every time you hear a click, I'm sampling from somewhere else. And just blending until I'm happy. I'm just going to zoom out and have a look at that. It's not so bad. Not so bad. Quite happy with that. So if you just go to the history tool, as you can see over here, just open the history palette, you can see what I've been done. You can set the amount of states. I think mine's set to 50. If it goes over 50, then you lose the ones before that, but you can set it to I don't know, quite a lot. I think it goes, I don't know if it's infinite. I'm pretty sure it won't be infinite unless you've got a massive hard drive with a scratch disk the size of Manhattan somewhere. But yeah, you can set the states to quite high, so you can go back sort of 200-300 processors. But I think mine's set to 50. I can go back. But what you can do is you can go back right to the image. You can look at the snapshot of the image right at the beginning, and if you just click that, you see where we've come from. So there are the rocks on the left hand side of the image that I wanted to take out. There's quite a few bits and pieces there. The content aware tool did do a good job. Just show you what it did. That's what it did, and this is what we ended up with. Just softening it out a little bit, taking those areas off, taking those kind of hard edge of the area where it's definitely cloned from this part of the image, and just tweaking it a little bit. And this is what I mean. It's not, it's not terribly difficult. And I think it is important to sort of go in and make these like sort of last bit of changes after you've used the content aware tool, because I think it's just that I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I kind of like to do this, but I have seen it where other people have used the content aware tool and sort of called it a day, and they've been happy with that, and they've kind of, you can see cloned areas in the image, and it's very obvious that they've used the content aware fill. As I say, it does a great job. Sometimes you can't tell. Sometimes Photoshop just nails it, but there are times like this one where you can see these visual echoes from other parts of the image, and it's just nice to sort of go in there and soften the areas out using what's available to you. Doing click clones, like I say, holding down Alt, sampling from somewhere. You can see the sample ring come up. If I just make this brush bigger, you'll see if I press sample, you see the state of the brush changes, and you can see where you're going to sample from, and then you can click and brush that into somewhere else in the image. You can undo that because that's a bit harsh. Change the size of the brush all the time. Be sort of very aware about and very deliberate about how you're doing this. But I think it's great to sort of go in and make that extra effort just to make sure that your image is the best that it can be, and we end up with something that we're better pleased about, and that's not a bad job right there. I think that's pretty good. You don't think at a glance you'd ever be able to tell that there was an outcrop of rocks just behind this big green one there in the centre of the image, but it is worth paying that last bit of extra attention to. So have fun with it, yeah, and give it a try. You know, maybe choose 1 or 2 images to have a play with this and see what you think. See how well you do having a play with it yourselves, and just you know, let me know how you've got on in the comments below. Come back and, you know, if you've had a bit of a bash at it and you think this has been useful, just let me know, and that'd be cool. And yeah, so happy cloning, happy content awareing, guys, and I hope this has been useful. I think I'm gonna save this image because I do actually quite like this with those bits of rocks out, but I'll have 2 versions. Don't save over the top, by the way. No, save a new file name, so you've got both of them. Yeah, it's always best to do. Times I've hit just save and just oof, image gone. Anyway, here we go. And that's all I've got to really say about that. So thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by, thanks for paying attention. Hope this little tip has been informative, and, you know, maybe give you something to think about when you're using that tool. Back on, see if it makes a difference, and I'll see you later. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to go and take some photos now because this place is bonkers. So I'll see you later. Bye.